colour tiles are the oldest: cuerda, seco, alicatado. The colour tile technique involved scribing a line on the clay, then putting in the colour. The line stopped the colours running, and then the tiles are fired, obviously, with a glaze, but not always. Some people seem to have a problem with the fact that Moorish Arabs brought tiles to the Iberian Peninsula. Persian culture had given the Arabs much, and to the Romans. There are people that don't want to identify Persia as having a rich, an ancient, golden crescent, the Levant, Semitic culture, but it is really the greater of the three Semitic cultures. Colour tiles of images rather than patterns is definitely not the style of the Arab Moor. It's much more modern. This church pretty much dates from 1975. It's difficult to find details of what was there before the current refurbishment, but it was around in the 1700s. The coloured tiles that you see are a majolica, or a faience technique, where you glaze the tile once, then put on strange-looking interaction of colours that requires quite abstract thinking, that change dramatically in colour when they're fired. Iberian colour tiles were particularly popular in Naples in Italy, arriving sometime in the 1500s. But to me, the riot of colour inside and outside the church I've only usually seen from stained glass windows. But this colour and storytelling is all over the walls everywhere. To me, my associations, this church would be more at home in Brazil, wouldn't it? We usually associate Portuguese tiles with blue and white, though there are lots of old colour examples. The blue and white comes from China, really. In the 1600s, Chinese products were coming to Europe, particularly Holland, and Iberia as a whole, but particularly Portugal, though not having that Habsburg connection, did have a lot of Jewish slave traders that also had connections in Holland. These extended families in both countries would import what I think were often called Yiddish people from Eastern Europe and Poland as a preference, and then were known for training them and taking their slaves in as part of the family, even becoming part of the family. Not so many of the very fashionable blue and white tiles survive from that early period in Holland anymore, but they do in Portugal, where wealthy merchants were showing off their wealth and patronage. So much of the attractive, relaxing, quite conservative looking in contrast to blue and white tiles of many buildings in Portugal was in part financed by and in part enabled the financing of more comparatively wealthy Portuguese Jewish people doing business in Holland and enslaving poorer Eastern European Jewish people and selling them in Portugal to family members perhaps that wanted Jewish wives. Craftsmen obviously migrated too and were trained. And demand increased for these blue and white tiles because of the wealth that was coming from Brazil at the time. Viuva lamego wasn't founded in Lisbon until 1850, but that's the Sintra tile-making place. Sintra, you might have been there on holiday. The impressive tiles of the Orient Underground Station in Lisbon were installed for the Expo of 1998. In many locations in Portugal, as well as Brazil, tiling simply provides a longer lasting clean outside appearance. Rendered or painted exterior surfaces seem to quickly develop unsightly patches of black mildew, especially in coastal regions with high humidity. Tiles seem to get washed clean by rain. Tiles are a very effective way to rejuvenate an old building. Escadaria Celeron is a tiled staircase that's become a particular tourist attraction in Brazil. But everything a bit more garish and bright. Colonisers' home country products were only used as ballast, really, a lot of the time, for the ships going out to bring back the gold and the sugar. Today, the same popular tile designs can be found in both countries, just as centuries ago. The trouble with any apprentice setting up their new cottage industry after serving their time and now out there exploring in the new world would have been that the largest part of the population that wasn't enslaved in Brazil didn't really have the disposable income, the very small elite that would have preferred to get their tiles from the same place back home. Much of Brazil cities were tiled, but most cities were modernised between the 1950s and 1970s, which tended to mean bulldozing the old and replacing it with new. But this didn't happen in Sao Luis. It suffered a long economic crisis and there was simply no money to modernise anything at all. Sao Luis in Brazil has one of the world's deepest ports and is now preserving its old city centre, with the wealth that the bigger ships bring to it. The tiles may not now come from Coimbra, Porto or Lisbon. Sao Luis was French for a bit and Dutch for a while. It had rice, sugar and cotton, now mining, but retains the most tiled buildings outside of Lisbon. Though a crumbling city more generally, UNESCO justifies their decision in the inscription on the historic centre of São Luís do Maranhão, an outstanding example of a Portuguese colonial town that adapted successfully to the climatic conditions in equatorial South America, and which has preserved its urban fabric, harmoniously integrating with the natural setting to an exceptional degree, far from the garish rumba rave aesthetic of some of the favelas of other towns, more akin to the pale-skinned pastel madonnas of the home country churches.
Minha sereia dança feliz e brilham só pratos,